You have been taught a lie your entire life. A lie so pervasive, so deeply embedded in modern culture that questioning it feels like rejecting reality itself. The lie is this: connection is always good. Isolation is always bad. More friends equals more success. More networking equals more opportunities. This is complete fiction, and believing it is destroying you. Right now, you are surrounded by people who drain you. People who demand your attention but give nothing in return. People who occupy your mental space but contribute nothing to your growth. People who know your business, your plans, your vulnerabilities, and will use that information against you the moment it serves them. You call them friends, you call them colleagues, you call them your network. But they are chains, and every interaction with them is another link being added to the weight that's pulling you down. Niccolò Machiavelli watched the powerful princes of Renaissance Italy. He observed who rose and who fell, and he noticed something that modern society refuses to acknowledge. The princes who maintained constant social connection, who kept large courts, who surrounded themselves with advisors and allies, these princes were constantly betrayed, constantly manipulated, constantly vulnerable to plots they never saw coming. But the princes who withdrew strategically, who kept small circles, who understood the power of isolation, these princes were untouchable. Not because they were stronger, but because they removed the primary vector through which power is lost: other people. Tonight, I'm going to show you why isolation is not weakness, why withdrawing from society is sometimes the most aggressive move you can make, why the hermit on the mountain is often more powerful than the socialite at the party. This is not about becoming a recluse forever. This is about understanding that isolation is a weapon, a strategy, a calculated choice that the weak cannot make and the strong refuse to avoid. Let's begin. Before we discuss the power of isolation, you need to understand what constant connection is doing to you. You think you're networking, you think you're building relationships, but you're actually bleeding information, energy, and power with every interaction. Every person in your life is a potential liability, not because they're bad people, but because they have their own interests, their own agendas, their own problems. And when their interests conflict with yours, what do you think happens? They take from you. And you let them, because that's what connection requires. Think about your last week. How many conversations did you have where you gave more than you received? How many times did you listen to someone's problems without them asking about yours? How many interactions left you more drained than energized? You're operating like an open-source intelligence agency, constantly broadcasting your location, your activities, your thoughts, your plans, your vulnerabilities. And everyone you're connected to is collecting that intelligence. They're not doing it maliciously, they're just doing what humans do, gathering information and using it to serve their own interests. Machiavelli observed that the prince who shared everything with his court was the prince who got betrayed. Because courtiers talk, they form alliances, they compare notes, and eventually they know more about the prince than the prince knows about them. The information asymmetry reverses, and when that happens, the prince loses control. You are that prince. Your social circle is your court, and they know too much about you. Here's what constant connection does to you. First, it diffuses your focus. Every person in your life wants something from you. Your time, your attention, your energy, your validation, but every moment spent on their needs is a moment stolen from your goals. Second, it creates dependencies. The more connected you are, the more you rely on others for emotional support, for validation, for approval. You stop trusting your own judgment because you're constantly checking it against the opinions of your network. Third, it generates interference. Other people's drama becomes your drama. Other people's problems become your problems. Other people's opinions become noise in your head when you're trying to make decisions. Fourth, it establishes patterns. When you're constantly connected, people learn to predict you. They know your schedule, your habits, your reactions. Predictability is vulnerability. When people can predict you, they can manipulate you. Fifth, it creates accountability to the wrong people. You start making decisions based on how your social circle will judge them rather than based on what serves your interests. You avoid risks because you don't want to look foolish. Your reference group becomes your prison. This is the trap of constant connection. It feels like strength, but you're actually creating dependencies, vulnerabilities, and constraints. You're building a cage and calling it community. The powerful understand something that the weak never learn. Every connection is a potential chain, and the more chains you have, the less free you are. Now let me show you what happens when you withdraw. When you deliberately reduce your social connections, when you choose isolation as a strategic move rather than accepting it as a failure. First, you reclaim your attention. Every conversation you're not having is attention you're keeping. Every social obligation you eliminate is time you're recovering. This attention, this time, this energy, it all flows back to you, and you can redirect it toward things that actually build your power. Machiavelli wrote about the prince who needed to withdraw to his chambers to think clearly. Away from courtiers, away from the constant demands of court life. In isolation, the prince could see clearly, could think strategically, could make decisions based on what was true rather than what was politically acceptable. You need the same withdrawal. You need space away from other people's opinions, other people's judgments, other people's expectations. Second, you eliminate information leakage. When you're isolated, you're not talking. When you're not talking, you're not sharing information. Your plans remain private. Your weaknesses remain hidden. Your strategies remain unknown. This is intelligence security. Every successful operation, every significant achievement, every major move requires secrecy during the preparation phase. You cannot build something significant while constantly explaining it to people who will either steal it or sabotage it. Third, you break predictability. When you withdraw, your patterns disappear. People who thought they knew your schedule don't know it anymore. People who thought they could predict your reactions stop being able to. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. Fourth, you increase your value through scarcity. When you're always available, you're not valuable. When you're constantly present, you're taken for granted. But when you withdraw, when you become scarce, your value increases. People appreciate what they can't easily access. Fifth, you gain perspective. When you're inside the social network, you can't see it clearly, but when you withdraw, you see who actually matters. You see which relationships were genuine and which were transactional. You see who reaches out when you stop initiating. You see the truth. Here are the specific situations where isolation becomes a strategic imperative rather than a choice. Situation 1. When you're building something significant. When you're working on a project that requires deep focus. When you're developing skills that require thousands of hours of practice. When you're creating something that could change your life. This is when isolation is non-negotiable. Every social obligation during this period is a threat to your success. Every person demanding your attention is an enemy of your goals. You need to disappear, not forever, just until the work is done. Situation 2. When you're being watched too closely, when competitors are tracking your moves, when enemies are looking for weaknesses, when your success is making you a target. This is when isolation is protection. Stop telegraphing your intentions. Stop sharing your plans. Stop letting people track your progress. Work in silence. Move in darkness. Let your success be the announcement. Situation 3. When your social circle is holding you back, when the people around you criticize your ambitions, when they question your goals, when they express doubt about your capabilities, when they subtly sabotage you. This is when isolation is escape. These people are anchors. They want you to stay at their level because your growth makes them uncomfortable. You cannot rise while carrying anchors. Cut them off, not with announcement, just with distance. Situation 4. When you're being drained. When every interaction costs you more than it gives. When you're exhausted from maintaining relationships that don't serve you. When you're spending your energy on people who contribute nothing to your growth. This is when isolation is recovery. Stop being available to everyone. Stop responding to every demand. Stop sacrificing your energy for people who wouldn't sacrifice theirs for you. Withdraw, recover, protect your resources. Situation 5. When you need to rebuild your power, when you've lost status, when you've failed publicly, when people have seen you weak, when your value has declined. This is when isolation is rehabilitation. Disappear for a while. Stop being available. Force people to wonder where you went and what you're doing. When you return, the dynamic will have shifted. Situation 6. When you're healing, when you've been hurt, betrayed, disappointed, when you need to process pain without performing wellness for others. This is when isolation is recovery. Isolation during vulnerability is protection. You heal in private. You rebuild in secret. You emerge strong, and nobody saw you weak. Situation 7. When you're being pulled in too many directions, when everyone wants something from you, when your attention is fragmented across too many people, too many obligations, this is when isolation restores focus. Cut everything. Temporarily withdraw from everyone. Create space to remember what actually matters to you versus what you've been convinced matters by people who want things from you. The concern with isolation is that you'll miss opportunities, that you'll damage important relationships. These are valid concerns, which is why isolation must be strategic, not total. Calculated, not impulsive. Here's how you isolate effectively without destroying everything you've built. First, you tier your relationships. Not everyone gets cut off. You identify the relationships that provide genuine value, and you maintain those. You create tiers. Inner circle, maintained. Outer circle, reduced contact. Drain circle, eliminated. This is selective isolation. You're not becoming a hermit. You're becoming selective. You're withdrawing from the 90% that costs you while maintaining the 10% that serves you. Second, you create opacity without explanation. You don't announce that you're isolating. You don't explain that you need space. You just become less available. You respond slower. You decline invitations without elaborate excuses. You create distance through action, not announcement. When people ask where you've been, you give vague answers. Busy with projects. Focusing on some things. You're friendly but not detailed. Third, you maintain strategic visibility. You don't disappear completely. You maintain just enough presence that people remember you exist. An occasional message, a rare appearance. Just enough to prevent people from writing you off while maintaining enough distance to protect your isolation. Total disappearance makes people forget you. Strategic visibility maintains your position while protecting your space. Fourth, you automate what you can. You set up systems that maintain minimal connection without requiring your active participation. Scheduled posts, automated responses. You create the appearance of presence without the cost of actual presence. Fifth, you return strategically. Isolation is not permanent in most cases. It's a phase, a period of withdrawal to accomplish something specific. And when that's accomplished, you return. But you return with more power because you've grown during the isolation and they've learned to value you through your absence. You now understand what most people never learn. That isolation is not failure. That withdrawal is not weakness. That strategic solitude is one of the most powerful moves you can make in a world that demands constant connection. Society tells you to network, to connect, to maintain relationships, to be social, to never be alone. Society tells you this because society benefits from your connection. Your employer benefits from your networking. Your social circle benefits from your availability. Everyone benefits except you. Isolation serves you. It protects your attention from being claimed by others. It guards your information from being used against you. It gives you space to think clearly without the noise of other people's opinions. It allows you to grow without the resistance of people who want you to stay the same. Machiavelli's final lesson on this was simple. The prince who cannot be alone is a prince who cannot be sovereign. Because sovereignty requires the ability to make decisions without the input, approval, or permission of others. And that ability only develops in isolation. You have been taught to fear being alone, to see isolation as punishment, as failure, as something to avoid. But isolation is power. It is the space where clarity emerges, where strength is built, where transformation happens. From this moment forward, you understand that connection is optional, that relationships are tools, not requirements, that you can withdraw whenever it serves you. The weak cannot isolate. They need constant validation, constant connection, constant reassurance from others that they exist and matter. They are terrified of being alone because being alone means facing themselves, and they don't like what they see. But you are not weak. You can be alone. You can withdraw, you can isolate, and in that isolation you can build power that connection would never allow. Use isolation strategically, not as escape, not as avoidance, but as a weapon, as a tool for growth, as a period of preparation before you return stronger than you left. Your isolation begins now, not forever, not completely, but enough to reclaim your attention, enough to protect your information, enough to break patterns, enough to remember who you are without the noise of who everyone else wants you to be. Withdraw, build, return. This is the cycle of strategic power, and it starts with the courage to be alone.